Everybody. Welcome to another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted. And I am super excited today to talk to Dr. Wang. And I'll get the pronunciation right. Say your first name.
Fangzhou.
Okay. Thank you. I'll call you Dr. Wang.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is read Dr. Wang's bio so I can properly introduce her, and then we're just going to get right into the questions because what she knows, you need to know for sure, and all her research and all that. So I am going to read her bio. Dr. Wang is an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Arlington. She earned her doctoral degree in criminology and criminal justice from Georgia State University in May 2023. Her academic journey began with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Temple University, followed by a master's degree in criminology from the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Wang's research pursuits revolve around understanding the intricate behaviors, particularly linguistic aspects exhibited by online romance fraudsters. Her focus also extends to investigating the risk and protective factors that influence individuals falling victim to online romance scams. Moreover, her interests encompass exploring various forms of image-based violence prevalent in the digital realm. Dr. Wang has been featured in various media outlets, including The Conversation, The Wired Magazine, Georgia State News Hub, and the Arirang TV. I'm probably pronouncing that totally wrong. And so, Dr. Wang, I just want to say thank you for joining me today and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, we'll just dive right in.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what originally sparked your interest in romance scams? And was it really romance scams or was it criminology and then it kind of morphed into romance scams?
So initially when I started my PhD, my mentor at PhD, he asked me to select one of the main or more specific area of interest within cybercrime that I want to study, in my academic career. So I was like, I do not really interested in hacking or dark web, hackers, because I feel like all of them, they are anonymous, and I feel like it's very hard to gather some kind of data from them or gather the data even from the victims themselves, because majority of them, they are business or large organizations, and which I don't think I can get a lot of data from them. So so at that time I began to think about why not focusing on a type of crime in online fraud, because fraudulent behaviors count against individuals like us everyday lives. So it kind of making me easier to gather the data set. So I dived right into the online fraud, and at that period somebody contacted me on Tinder, and I met a fraudster. Oh my gosh. And I literally talked to him for almost 3 months before he asked me about sponsoring his business in, I think it's in Afghanistan or South. I don't remember the exact locations, but he asked the money from me to sponsor his business, and he said he was broken. He doesn't have the money for the flight tickets. He doesn't have the money for paying his workers. And then I did because as a criminologist, I have a natural instinct for criminals. So I went online and I used reverse image tool to search his pictures and search his emails, and I find out he is the scammers that has already been exposed by other victims online. So I immediately cut the connection with him and blocked him and reported him to the IC3, which is kind of like a reporting platform with FBI. So immediately after that time I began to, search for this kind of scam, for especially within academia, about, what this kind of scam is, and are there any scholars researching this type of scam? And I did find a few. So I was like, why not? I just, focus on this type of scam and did some, research around it. And I proposed this plan to my mentor, and he said, go for it. So that's when I started to research this type of scam. And that's the story behind it.
Well, nothing better than a case study, a real life case study that it's just like, this stuff is real. It happens every day. And
Right.
Tinder is I've watched the Tinder Swindler, and it's just amazing. And they target intelligent. I mean, you're intelligent, well-educated person. It doesn't matter who but they tend to target well-educated women. So in your opinion, I know this is not on really my official question list, but are they looking for, a specific profile? And being an intelligent woman, why do some intelligent women who are so smart in every other area, and yet they fall prey all the way? They don't have the skills you have, and they do send money, and they do that. Why would intelligent women do that?
Well, I think the most important reason, like, I don't want to speak from, majority of the people, it's just from my own experience, is that, I have already cut out from my previous relationship for almost like 5 years. And I personally felt a little bit, lonely. I don't want to say that, but that's the truth, because, all the stress I got from my PhD degree, all the stress I got from my families, and I just need somebody to really understand me and listen to me. And at that time, I was kind of like blinded, and I didn't think much about this type of scam because I never heard of it. So when the things happened, is actually before the release of the Tinder Swindler document. So I didn't realize this kind of scam exists. And I was like, that could just be somebody who just want to catfish me. But it turns out he actually wants to get the money from me. So I think it is the lonely part, and it is the feeling of wanting to talk to somebody that really tricked me during the whole process. But I wouldn't want to speak to the majority of the females who fall into this kind of scam. It could be possible that she may be just as lonely as me, or she could, fall into this kind of scam for other reasons. But I don't want to, speak to majority of the people, but I just want to speak from my own experience. So
yeah, and that makes sense. But I think you hit a really good point in that a overarching trait, I guess you could say, or an overarching emotion that women experience who fall prey to scams, whether you catch it early on or whether it just comes full, gets full blown as to thousands of dollars, because we know women are selling their houses and they're giving away their life savings. But the loneliness is the thread, I think, that really ties everything together, because we are not meant to live our whole life alone. We need community, whether it's a group of friends or whatever. And I think these, in my personal opinion, these guys who are they're targeting who they think are the lonely ones, and the lonely ones are perfect targets. We just want connection. That's it, just connection.
And especially during my PhD, it's COVID, it's pandemic. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's definitely something should be counted for why I kind of like tricked during the whole process. So.
Yeah. Now, I am so impressed when I was doing my research to talk to you. You have authored 7, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've co-authored 7 journal articles, but one in particular caught my interest, and it's titled "What Money Can Do: Examining the Effects of Rewards on Online Romance, Fraudsters, Deceptive Strategies." So can you explain some of your findings and what you learned about the deception strategies of the fraudsters themselves?
Of course. So in this paper, I use a very innovative approach that was not used by majority of the researchers, is to use the experimental approach by holding a live conversation with the actual fraudsters. So basically we extract using Python. It's like a scrapping software to scrap all the emails that the victims exposed online. Like, so there is a platform, it's called stopscammers.com. And that platform is where the victims can expose all the details of their fraudsters online, including their names, their address, their fake phone numbers, their, the victim's whole experience, like their narrations. So by using, the resources provided by this website, we are able to, extract all those fraudsters' emails and initiate a series of conversations. So particularly, we follow, of course, the IRB approved procedures. So we draw the data from, a sequential email exchanges with 94 active romance fraudsters, and we are able to find that firstly, the fraudsters always present themselves as like non-threatening persons in one or more ways on their initial exchange with the victims. For example, they may say, my name is Anna, I am a single mom, and I am looking for a husband to spend the rest of my life with me, or I am a single man and I just broke up with my fiance or my wife, and I have a kid and I need somebody to spend the life with me, to support me and to support my children. So in this whole process, they present themselves as very non-harming figures, which kind of like trick the victims in certain ways in the initial exchange. And the second findings I find is that each one of the fraudsters, so during the conversation they had with the victims, they will kind of like change the victim's self-view, like how they view themselves. So they did so in two primary ways. So in the first, they would use like all kinds of like flattering language, like saying, honey, my sweetheart, you are the best person in the world, how sweet you are, something like that, to really make the victims feel like they are in a romantic relationship with somebody online. And secondly, the second and more common ways the fraudsters will focus on the victims' identities is by giving the victims the decisive power. So this stage typically happens when they ask the money from the victims. However, they will ask in a way, for example, do you want to give me the money? Do you want to share the money with me? You're the one who can decide whether or not sending me the money. So in this whole process, the victims does not actually feel any like threatening or like coercive powers that the fraudsters impose on them. Rather, they feel like it's more like an equal conversation between, girlfriend and boyfriend that, really kind of like really incites the victims' sympathy to help the fraudsters or the fabricated figures in some ways. And the last findings I find out is that the fraudsters would appear to the relationship with the victims. Of course, the fraudsters will use all kind of like languages saying, asking this money is to benefit our relationship in the futures, or I value this relationship more than I value the money, something like that. Actually, in this research, I also find out another thing, which I think is very interesting, is that whenever the victims or us or the researchers stopped replying to the fraudsters' emails or did not reply in time, the fraudsters will keep following up saying, hey, how are you? How was the weather in your country? And all that language. And I feel like they really make the conversations like really interactional to make the victims feel that they are actually talking to a real person instead of the fake ones. So that's what I find out in this research.
Oh, that is all just rich stuff, because it's so real. And I want to touch on the point that you said they will use very endearing language, and I don't know if in your studies you can confirm this, but what I've learned also is that they never really use your name. They'll give you pet names like, oh, babe, or sweet, sweet,
Right.
or honey,
That's true.
because they're talking to multiple women at a time, and they don't want to confuse the names and give themselves away. So they'll just name you sweetie or honey and stuff like that. So did you find that as well, that they use endearing names, but never the person's name themselves?
Right. I find out that one specifically. I think the most important reason behind that phenomenon is that they talk to so many people and they did not remember each of their names, and they don't want to go back to the first thread, asking who what's your name, they won't do that. So they prefer just like save their effort by calling them sweetheart or like babe. So that's definitely true.
Yeah, that's so real. And can you repeat that website that you mentioned that you can put all the details of reporting on?
Okay, sure. So it's called STOP. So STOP dash scammers, SCAMMERS.com. So that's
Perfect.
the website.
And I'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can can get that and know where to find it.
That's true.
Another thing you said is that they do, which I thought was really interesting. You said that they really never threaten their target with, if you don't give me this money, I will ... They, and I hate to use the word victim because it's just so disempowering, but the target will willingly give money because they want to help the fraudster. And when I was involved with one a few years after I was divorced in, I think, 2000, and he was an online dating site predator, and he did that same thing. Oh, but honey, or whatever he called me, I'm working for our future, and typically they could be in investments, think a lot of times it's financial. But that's one thing he said that you found in your studies was that, yeah, I'm working for us. I'm working for our future. Yeah.
Right. But I want to mention that in terms of the threatening, it is not to say that the fraudsters will never threaten a victims, because once they get anything that can discriminating against you, for example, your private pictures, you know what I'm saying? Like your private pictures or the videos, they will start like using that against you to blackmail you. So definitely the threatening happens. But if the fraudsters do not get anything that may be, not beneficial to you, so they won't do that. But once they get it, they will definitely utilize it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And they maybe won't threaten that first because they're setting up their scenario, and they will take up to, I think I've read 6 months. That seems like a long time to set up their scenario before they ask for money. So there's a trust level there. But I think you're right. And that's why women, especially, never send suggestive pictures or anything to anybody that you meet, because as you just said, they could come back and say, you know what, if you don't give me this money, I'm blasting this picture out to the world.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. My next question is kind of piggybacking on that, is why are so few online romance scammers ever caught or jailed?
Yeah. So I would say that the scammers themselves, they often operate across international borders, making it very challenging for the law enforcement agencies to even track them down or persecute them because of the jurisdiction differences. So, and moreover, these scammers, they often use like fake identities, of course, because the names and the pictures they use online are definitely fake. And they may use like VPNs to hide their traces online, and they will use encrypted communication with the victims, because majority of the time they meet the victims in public platforms such as Tinder. But after a while, they will ask the victims to move to the platforms such as the messengers or WhatsApp or Telegram. Telegram, all those encrypted communications can hide the fraudsters' traces online to prevent being caught by the police. And most importantly, some countries, I'm not saying the US, but the other countries, they may be just having, limited resources or laws that do not even specifically address this kind of scam, which can complicating the whole process. And additionally, I think that the victims sometimes maybe feel embarrassed or ashamed and may not even report their cases to the law enforcement. So, and most importantly, some elder, especially the elder victims, they may even not aware that they have been scammed until it is too late to report. So this kind of lack of reporting make it harder for the authorities to prosecute those scammers. So I think that could be the two potential reasons for the whole why it's very hard to catch those scammers from the perspective of the the offenders themselves, and also from the perspective of the victims.
Yeah, that's so true. And watching the Tinder swindler on Netflix, basically, it was like those women gave $100,000 and more dollars, and they were responsible for paying that back, because the fraudster may say, I'm going to pay you back. I promise I will. You'll get your money back. And they'll promise until the day they die, but they will never obviously pay a cent back. And so as a victim, a target, if you've given that much money, you're responsible for that much money. Nobody's going to come along and say, okay, we're going to forgive you. We have a special fund. There, as far as I know, there is no special fund to pay back what targets have spent.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. So is there a certain personality type that romance fraudsters specifically look for?
So as I am a scholar, and I don't want to speak to any kind of conclusions without inferring to an empirical paper. So the paper I want to mention is a paper written by a researcher called Monica Wadey. So she is a professor in UK, and I think she wrote a paper. The title is "Do You Love Me? ? Psychological characteristics of romance scam victims," I think. Yeah. So she found out that the romance scam victims tend to be middle-aged, well-educated women. Moreover, they tend to be more impulsive. So they typically will score, high scores on the urgency and the sensation seeking, and then they tend to be less kind. And they tend to be more trustworthy and have like addictive disposition for the new relationship. So that's what she found out.
Yeah, that is so true. And they typically do look for just the new widow that might have a life insurance payout from her husband, or a newly divorced woman, mid-age, typically middle age, that might have a little something, a little settlement of something. So they know they're not going to go out to the streets, just anybody. They're looking for a specific target.
Right, but I feel like because this paper was released in 2018, so the data is not really like up to date. I would see that there are more victims, specifically those older, elderly women who got scammed by this kind of fraudsters. So definitely we need more research to like update our findings on what type of victims may be more attractive to this kind of fraudsters. So definitely yes.
Yes, and have you found that the majority of targets are women? Because I know men fall to this.
Right.
Well, how are the percentages divided up? Is what it's hard.
So I'm actually currently conducting a research on this type of area, but I didn't have the conclusion yet. But from my experience, I think it's equal. It's half-half. Yes. So nobody. Not one gender is more likely to fall into this kind of scam, but equally distributed throughout different genders. Even those people who are not heterosexuals, they may also fall into this kind of scam. So
wow. And you know what, that I'm going to do a sequel to The Heart Swindler, and the sequel is going to be men's stories, because the book I just released is women's stories, and it's not just romance scams, it's
Right.
relationship deception
It is.
with narcissistic abuse as well. But
Right.
I want to hear men's stories as well, because there are
Mhm.
plenty of men out there who have fallen prey to the wiles of female romance fraudsters.
Well, I would say that online romance scam, a lot of people say it is very similar to domestic violence, but I would say it's kind of different because the fraudsters target both male and the females. It's not just the females, but they use like very similar psychological manipulations and the physical manipulations to isolate the victims from their family members and friends. So I would say they are similar, but they are kind of different in terms of the target populations. So just want to mention that.
Yes, yes. Okay, so that brings up, just in your research, in your education in criminology, all that, if you were sitting across the table from a romance fraudster in a room, face to face, what would you say to, and we'll just say him in this case, what would you say to him?
When I saw this question, I was like, that's something I really want to do in my research. I want to interview them. I want to question them. I want to ask why they are doing this. So to answer this question, I would be very curious about their motivations and background. I maybe ask about, what actually lead them to choose this path, and whether they have considered the impact of their actions on the victims. And I also want to know, their perspectives about why they are doing this kind of scam without actually accusing them, why, the serious impact they have on the victims, because I want to be objective. And ultimately, I also want to stress the fact that the human cost of their actions, emphasizing the emotional, devastating consequences of their behaviors. And lastly, I would like to encourage them to consider their actions or the choices, reconsider, and seek a more like positive or ethical ways to earn their livings. So that's what I want to do.
Yes, and I believe a lot in my own, research that I've done, a lot, if not most, are narcissistic personalities. So they don't have the empathy. They don't see how their actions affect others. They just do it because they're compelled to do it. It's almost like a chase, but they don't see, oh, I've left a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts in the wake. It's like, what's the problem?
And some of them, they even say that, my crime is different from the robbery and burglary because nobody is actually harmed in the process, like physically harmed. So I think my behavior is justified and I do not need to be, repentant about my behaviors. And I just use the persuasions to make the victims voluntarily send their monies to me. They are the one who are willingly to send the money. I didn't use any force, So that was kind of something that's kind of angered me a little bit, So yeah.
Yes, it must be fascinating to dive into the psychology of
I want to talk to
romance
them. Oh my gosh.
fraudsters.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, I want to ask you, what can women do to see the warning signs sooner rather than later? Because often women see it after the fact. Like me, when it happened, it was just, oh, wait a minute. If somebody told me if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Oh no, this is a man of my dreams. Oh no, and the woman themselves explain it away. So I didn't see, having never gone through it, I didn't see the warning flags, but I would now. But what can women do to see the warning flags sooner rather than later?
Of course. So I would say, based on my research, the first warning sign is the fraudsters will ask the victims to shift to a private messaging. So typically, the fraudsters will prompt the victims to move to a communication off the initial platform, such as Tinder or Facebook. They prefer the private channels, such as emails, DMs, or Skype, which can isolate the victims from the public settings. And the second one, the red flag, I would say, is the rapid intensifying in relationship. So fraudsters will explore, different vulnerabilities in the victims. Most importantly, is the emotional ones, right? So they will by, intensifying the engagement from very early on. They will say, babe, sweetheart, I love you so much. I want to be your husband, all that. So this will include, dramatic gesture, profession of quickly aiming to, impair the rational thinking of the victims, making them really fall in love and kind of like blinding their eyes for, the truth. And the third red flag, I would say, is the geographic barrier and the deception. So the fraudsters will create, different kind of challenges to meet with the victims in person. They will claim themselves in a very far-reaching countries, such as, somewhere in far away that side. So this kind of temporary separations is used to extract the funds, or just simply use the verbal language to promise the futures, but however will never happens among them. And the last one, I would say, the red flags will include the kind of inconsistencies, where is their linguistic talking, or their fabricated wealth. So the victims sometimes will notice an linguistic inconsistencies in the messages the fraudsters send to them. Some fraudsters, they will fake their lavish lifestyle to lure those, especially those financially vulnerable, the victims. So aiming to substantiate the relationship for their own personal gains in the futures. And lastly, I would say the last red flag I want to mention is that the fraudsters will intentionally isolate you from your other friends or families. They will say, don't tell others about our relationships, and I just want to be with you. I don't want other people to know our, love or the romantic relationship. So by using this kind of isolation, they intentionally cut the connection between you and the outside world, which can make the victims more likely to fall into this kind of scam or send the money, because they have nobody to, to make the consultation. So that's
Yes. Oh, that is really great information, because the a popular one that most people are aware of now is I work on an oil rig,
right.
Out in the ocean, and the whole thing, and just the geographical, they're never in the same, rarely, I would say, not never, rarely in the same city. Most of this does not happen in person. Most of it happens from other countries, and they want to come here, or they have a job that requires them to travel all over the place.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. Is there a way, if say a woman is online on an online dating site and she meets somebody, is there a way to differentiate or question, maybe he does have a legitimate job, maybe it's a super nice, wonderful man that has a legitimate job that requires him to travel, but she's heard this stuff and she's like, oh no, you're not real. And then she has passed up what could be a really great thing. Is there a way to discern what's real and what's Memorex, as they used to say, what's real and what's fake?
Well, I would say, because now the technology is like, accelerating so fast that people can use the deep fake to fake their faces when video calling with the victims. So I wouldn't say the video calling is a good approach, because the fraudsters can change their face and their voice. I would say one of the approach the victims can use is to use the reverse image tool on Google Chrome. So they can search I think they can insert the image in the box, and the system will to tell the victims who this person is, and what he works for, and the real face of these individuals. And also the victims can use the emails domains that the fraudsters send the message to him or her to search online to see if these emails appears in any kind of like fraud detection forums, such as the soft scammers one I told you. So I think that would be a good approach. But
Okay.
always remember, whenever you are talking to like a normal person, exists in the real world, or a fraudsters, just don't send the money. Just meet first, figure out all the background information of that person. Even though you and the real person is in a relationship, I think it's not very rational for you to send the money, in such an early stage, even for like a real people. So just be careful whenever you were asked about, the money. So
Yeah, definitely, because that's the only target, the only motivation really of a romance fraudster is to
get the money.
get money.
Yeah.
And usually the money from the present one is funding the money from the past one is funding the life for the present target.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. So if a person sees their friend getting involved with someone they suspect is an online romance fraudster, how can they best approach that friend to protect them? Is there a way to do that?
Well, from my perspective, I can suggest four. So the first one is always listen without any judgment. So always be a supportive listeners and let your friends share their feelings, their experiences without feeling, being judged. So always avoid, any negative emotions or like overly critical about their behaviors. And the second one is educate your friend without accusing them. So always share, like general information I share in this podcast about, this kind of scam without, directly attributing it to their situations. Always discuss, some common tactics used by the fraudsters and how this scam work without mentioning the person they have involved with. And the third one is always offer the evidence-based observations. So if you notice a specific red flags in their, online partners' behaviors or inconsistencies in their stories, just gently point it out. Do not be like super critical or something like that. Present the evidence calmly. Don't argue or fight, and objectively without being, confrontational. And the last one is always remember to suggest like a verification approach, like I did in this podcast. So encourage your friend to verify the identity of the persons they have been involved with by suggesting, the reverse image searches, checking the social media profiles, or simply just maybe using the video calls to confirm the person's identities, even though it could be fake. But whenever people using the deep fake technology, it's kind of like obvious because it's just like shifting left and right. So I think using the video calls sometimes can confirm a person's identities. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I know when I was the target and victim, of the online dating, and I came to call him the hustler. It was he was okay. He was flying in from another state, but he was willing to meet people that I knew. And usually that's a tip off because they do want to isolate, as you previously said. Right. But he was willing to meet the people that I knew. And one of my coworkers, who was a very savvy, kind of street smart Italian guy,
right?
And he asked him maybe 3 questions about a place that he said he had lived. And I took him back, it was a lunch period. And so I took him back to my condo. And then I came back to work. And my coworker said, something wrong, something's off. He didn't answer correctly. And so a lot of times, even if they're willing to meet your friends, I mean, you really want them to. You really want them, if they're willing, if they're more localized or in another state or in, close in geography, then you want your friends to meet them because you're going to have one of your friends that know you very well that's going to say, something is off, something doesn't seem right.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. So to wrap up, do you have any final comments or thoughts that you would like to convey to the audience as they're listening? What do you have to say to them?
So Right. So the first thing I want to say, the awareness is always very crucial, because many victims fall into this kind of scam just due to the lack of awareness towards this kind of scam. Highlighting the prevalence of this scam, especially through, different research and through, government campaigns, or, even through like an NGO effort, like the podcast you made, can, share, can, distribute the tactics of these scams and the operations of this scam to general audience, to avoid this kind of scam. And the second one is always to watch out for the red flags. So individuals need to be educated about the common red flags that this scam present. Always watching out for these red flags can significantly decrease the chances that an individual may fall into this kind of scam. And the next one I want to say is always remember you have a support network around you. So always, you need to always emphasize the fact that the importance of the emotional support and support networks from those individuals around you. Always remember to seek help or any consultations from them if you meet any strangers online and you are not certain that if that's the person you want to talk to. Always seek helps and suggestions from your friends and your family members, and I think that's very important. That's what I want to say.
Yes, very much so. And that kind of sparked a final question for you, is that what exciting things do you have coming up that you are really like excited about? New research or anything in your field that you just is igniting you?
I would say that my future research will focus more on the combination of AI detection and the romance scam. So I feel like as a criminologist, if my research is not practical enough to really help the society, it's kind of like worthless. So I decided to follow the trend of the AI and also the big language modeling. And I decided to collaborate with a group of researchers from computer science department from other institutions. And we decided to develop a, potentially an AI detection, fraud detection tool that can be or potentially be possible to implement it on different, social media platforms that can alert the victims in the first place before they actually were contacted by the fraudsters. So that's something I want to do in the future.
Yes, that is great. Now, if somebody wants to connect with you or find out further about your research, how can they connect with you?
So I do have a Twitter handling. So you can just search my name, Fangzhou Wang. So they will get access to my profiles and they can message me on Twitter. And I think I also have a LinkedIn profile. So you can just search my name, Fangzhou Wang, and then you will see my name, UT Arlington. And the last one is my emails. So my email is Fangzhou, all decapitalized Wang, also decapitalized at uta.edu. So that's my email.
Great. And we will have all of these in the show notes so you can reference the links and everything like that. So thank you so much for being here. A wealth of information, and I just really appreciate the research that you're doing, and I think it's really influential, and I think it's really impactful, because if one woman can be helped, if one woman can be helped to see the signs beforehand, or if a fraudster can really, you can get into their brain and do some of that dissecting.
Right. That's
really great. So I want to thank you.
I also want to say that I really appreciate your work, in doing this podcast to letting more people know about this kind of scam. And I have go through your website. All things you did are amazing. Like I really want to do something like you do, but currently because of my positions, I probably do not have these resources or capabilities of doing that, or the time. Most importantly, so I really appreciate you doing all that for the community. And I hope, more people can hear my podcast and learn from it and avoid being scammed in the
Well,
future.
I appreciate that immensely, especially coming from you. I have great respect for your work and your research and everything. So I'm really thankful for that. And I just want to tell everybody, I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I know you have.
I am.
Yeah, I have too. So if you like it, please subscribe, and please share this with your network, because the more it's shared, the more people can get this information and be equipped and have tools in their tool bag for really protecting themselves. So until then, thank you for watching another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted.